Welcome to the Buy Box Bandits podcast.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Buy Box Bandits podcast, episode 171, brought to you by All Out Amazon, aka Garrett and myself, Flister Miles. We're excited to have two of our friends who we met at Miami Star Wars Conference last week. Actually, Brad and Brandon from OperationAMZ, who I was just checking out their Instagram page. They sold over $4 million into Amazon Wholesale in 2023, and the caption of the picture said, 5 years ago, I was struggling to pay rent as a broke college kid. So cool thing is we're excited to dive into how you guys got started with everything and such. Good to have you guys here, fellas.
Great to be here, guys.
Thanks
What's
for
up?
having me.
Absolutely. So obviously it didn't always used to be warehouses and beautiful big orange bars and fun trips to Miami to hang out with the gang and such. How'd you guys get started selling on Amazon?
Yeah. So it was humble beginnings. We actually started, it was interesting how we met. We actually were running two different Amazon businesses when we first started, and we were both doing retail arbitrage. And the way we met was we bumped into each other in a Marshall scanning for product. And it was so funny because from there we just started, bouncing ideas off of each other. And then it got to a point where we were like, all right, two minds together can just grow this a lot faster. So we dove in together and, we started doing retail arbitrage. We were doing arbitrage for probably 2 years or so. And then right around when COVID hit, we were doing hybrid arbitrage and wholesale. And then we made the pivot to 100% in wholesale 2021. And man, when we made that pivot, our sales went down, but it slowly started building up, and we haven't looked back since.
No, it's all right. It's a rough transition, transition business model. It's hard.
Yeah, I think a good approach for this episode is to really dig deep into sort of like that transition from arbitrage. Now, did you guys go straight from retail arbitrage to wholesale, or
we were doing both for a good amount of time?
There's
but you kind of skipped over like the online arbitrage, Dick's Sporting Goods.
I've kind of dabbled in everything. I mean, I've sold used clothes on eBay. I've sold books. I've sold bulk books. I've done RA. I've done a little bit of OA. I've done everything under the sun before kind of settling on wholesale. And so, there was a time where I was all over the place, but I was one of those guys going out to Nike buying, thousands of pairs of shoes at one point. And so for me, it was, and for both of us, it was a sustainable wholesale business model. And so that transition is a big thing for sure. And a lot of people struggle because they're dipping one toe in the pond and they're like, I don't know if I want to do this and go full out into wholesale. But for us, I mean, the transition was to say, if we're not putting all the time in, we're not going to get the results that we need. So it was taking that short-term sacrifice and not sourcing and just transitioning into calling companies and suppliers, and the time it was just needed to make it happen.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think a huge bottleneck, a huge kind of trouble area for people is making that transition, having success, whether it be an RA or an online arbitrage, and starting to kind of shift that mindset to wholesale, right? Because everything's working. They don't necessarily want to completely stop that cash flow, but they also understand that wholesale is kind of like that end game, the bigger scope that they want to get into. So take us back to that kind of experimental phase, if you will, of that first month or two, dipping your toes into that wholesale model, having success with the arbitrage stuff. What did that look like at that point?
Yeah, so we were literally going to stores at night and contacting suppliers during the day, during business hours. So we were working around the clock, just to kind of make both business models happen. I mean, we pack stuff up on the weekend, send it out to Amazon, pack stuff up at night, but we tried to dedicate most of the day to contacting suppliers, because at the end of the day in wholesale, that's how you grow a wholesale business, is just contact more brands and distributors.
Yeah. And you realize at a certain point, something has to give, there's only so many hours in a day. And so you can either continue to get this one-to-one, which is basically how we've described it a lot, is for us anyway, retail arbitrage is like you're buying yourself a job, because every product that you get, you sell, and then you have to go out and get more product. We wanted something that was more long lasting and compounding. and wholesale kind of has this snowball effect. And so totally different mindset, I think, from being a long-term RA seller. You got to totally shift, like paradigm shift on your thinking and how you approach the business.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah, and when
part. Oh, you got it. Yeah, you got it.
no, I was just gonna say that like during 2020, obviously all of us can probably attest to the fact that arbitrage was going nuts. So I mean, we were doing the pools, we were doing, you know, all
Weights.
the like the
Yeah.
whole all the stuff that was going crazy RA during COVID, but it was kind of like after 2020 where things like stabilized a little bit. We were like, all right, we need to have a little bit more sustainability, you know, that perpetual income from different accounts. And 2021 is when we just totally jumped into wholesale. So we transitioned out of RA, and a little bit of OA we were doing at the time, but mostly RA. We transitioned out of those models. And 2021, we set a goal. We were like January 1st, we're going to give this until the end of Q1, and we're going to contact 150 companies a week. And at the end of Q1, if we haven't made any progress, we're going to reevaluate this business model. And it worked, and we scaled it up. So it just kind of kept snowballing from there.
Yeah, and so let's say, so that's 12 weeks, right? 150 suppliers a week. Obviously, you know, if you hit that, ideally you go above it sometimes. Completely unreasonable for there not to be some good progress with that. You know what I mean? Like you got to put in some serious work, man, to find 150 a week. You know what I mean? And to stick with it and such. So it makes sense why it ended up working out. What does it actually look like though from the outreach perspective, right? Like what have you seen most effective? Brands, distributors, cold calling, cold emailing, starting out hitting up the brands you already sell with RA? Like what are you guys feeling with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we're almost, I don't want to say 100%, but we're probably about 95% brand direct. Which is, you know, a lot of the things that we saw, you know, we went to ASD in Vegas right before Miami Seller Conference, and a lot of the industry is kind of pivoting towards that brand direct, especially with all the, you know, violations that Amazon's handing out. You know, we're authorized to sell every single brand that we sell. And so when it comes to who we're reaching out to and targeting, we're looking for a discrepancy between how the brand sells and how the product is perceived by the customers, and then how it's presented online. So we're looking at all those things like listing optimization. We're basically contracting ourselves to work for that brand to build their online presence up, because even the smartest brand owners, a lot of times they know nothing about how Amazon works, and they know nothing about how, you know, they can better their brand on the platform.
So you're
Was
telling
that how it was from the beginning?
So in the beginning, we didn't have all of obviously the knowledge about
Right.
how Amazon's algorithm
Which is
works.
which is the part that's like, oh, I can't do wholesale because I don't know listing optimization, I don't know PPC, I don't know all this stuff. So that's the
Right.
part that kind of tricks people and never actually getting started.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, in the beginning, we were just contacting, whether it was distributors, brands, you know, we were doing a little bit of both in the beginning with distributors and brands. And it was the kind of thing that, you know, you just make the first call and then you make the second call and you just slowly learn from each call. And when you do something over and over again over the course of, you know,
Bound to get
months
better.
and years, like you just start getting a better understanding of it. And obviously, you know, where we are today with these brands on the phone is nowhere where we were when we started. Because when we started, we were stumbling on our words. We didn't know what to say. We didn't understand how to deal with the rejection. But, you know, over time, we've come to learn what a lot of these brands' pain points are and position our company in a way that can provide value to them.
Yeah, and there's examples of that too. I mean, we'll say, you know, we'll find a company that this year closed an exclusive with a competitor, right? Another seller. And we were like, shit, I was in contact with them, you know, 3 years ago. And if I knew what I knew now, then that could have been us and we could have closed, right? So there is that element of building on what you know. I mean, we don't know everything now. We didn't know everything in the beginning, and you know, we're working towards getting better every day, but it's about building the knowledge and just repetition at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's interesting
course.
too, because you see a lot of people in the TikTok comments or the YouTube comments say that no wholesalers want to sell to Amazon sellers. Meanwhile, right? Every single person I know, every single one who has made 500 cold calls, who has sent 1,000 unique cold personalized emails, none of them say that. right? Therefore, the gap is typically in the volume of action, right? Because you were saying you take time, you learn, you innovate, you start digging into the nuance. And that's really the only way to get anything done, right? Even if it's arbitrage, right? Like so many people go to the Nike out once and are like, fuck, man, this didn't work, right? But the dude who's been in the Nike out 100 times, he's pretty good at it. He knows the manager. The manager's telling him new stuff that came out. He knows when the sale's happening. He knows the sales cycle from last year as well. And as such, and it's pretty neat. And then I also like what you said about positioning too, because I think at the end of the day, that's a major component of opening up accounts. So what most people are doing, at least from what I've seen, is they hit up a wholesaler and say, hey, can I buy your products? Right? I assume you guys are saying very different things. You're saying, okay, this listing, you guys are getting XYZ sales a month. I think I could get it up to this with some PPC, and this description isn't as good as I think it is. So do you mind breaking down kind of like the modern wholesale value proposition for what people should be looking to do that are really serious and looking to get up, like not necessarily even accounts, more of just like partnerships, like I think the way you guys try to position it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. So many sellers are just contacting these brands saying, I want to buy your products or I want to sell your products on Amazon. But what we've done is we approach it from a completely different angle, and we essentially position ourselves as providing value to them. So rather than saying what we want, typically, we'll start the conversation with the path of least resistance. So if we can open a wholesale account, right? We're interested, we'll introduce ourselves, the name of our company, what we're doing, say we're interested in opening a wholesale account. And then from there, we'll kind of get an idea of what that company's position is with Amazon, if they're opposed to it, if they're open to it, or if they're somewhere in the middle. And I always say like the companies that are somewhat wishy-washy are the ones where like the gold mine is, because then you can take their perspective and help them understand Amazon a little bit better, and then position yourself as providing value to them.
Yeah, and Miles, I mean, you said you were even just hearing that, we don't accept Amazon sellers or whatever immediately. I mean, maybe my brain's wired like that after all these cold calls, but like my immediate question I'll even ask to you guys is like, why? Why
Right,
is that?
right.
Hey,
That's all, bro. You know what I mean? Just that one thing keeps the combo going and it gives me a shot. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And so it's, there's a reason behind that. And there's actually some statistics that, we learned at the Amazon Lit conference that we went to PGHL that they do in Las Vegas. And, I didn't know this. I figured it was relatively close, but Amazon, it makes up 4% of commerce, which is a lot lower than you would think. It makes up 20% of e-commerce, right? So in other words, brands do not give a crap about their Amazon presence, right? And so you need to make them care and give them a reason to care. And so the reason why that they don't want you to sell on Amazon is because all of their past experiences with other Amazon sellers have been terrible. It's like being, if you're in a relationship and every single experience is terrible, you might be a little worried about getting into a new relationship because you're like, the same thing's going to happen. And I've literally had suppliers tell me that, hey, we just got out of this agreement, whatever, with an Amazon seller. It was horrible. We don't want to enter into anything new. And so you have to make the positives for them outweigh the negatives that they have previously perceived with other sellers and other relationships.
So in your mind, given the brand direct model, what do you think is more important, quality or quantity? Right? Because from your guys' perspective, it seems as though you have a lot of front work in terms of like maybe pinpointing a couple of specific listings that you want to focus on, right? Maybe particular titles, things like that. But there is sort of like, I feel like a balance, a happy medium between doing that front work or 5xing the volume, 5xing the quantity. So for someone that's newer, that's looking to get into like that brand direct approach that maybe even has some success with wholesale, what's kind of like your take on that? What's like your perspective on that? Is it just like a lot of quality or really, really refine your approach and dig into the quality of the ones that you're outreaching to?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think for the beginner, I would say focus on volume and accumulating some sort of revenue stream, right? Because when you're just starting out, you just need to prove the concept. So you might gravitate towards the companies that are more open to working with Amazon sellers, and that's completely fine, right? So you might pick up some low-hanging fruit or some accounts, where other sellers are on the listing. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because that's going to provide you with like the motivation and the sustainability of actually seeing your sales go up. once you start getting good at that and adding some products to your inventory, I would say understanding that the long-term path is brand direct wholesale. And, for us, it's always been quality of accounts over quantity. But that's not to say we're not trying to do volume, right? We're still, focused on doing volume. We have some distributors, we have some brands, but as far as like the key accounts that we have, it's probably maybe a handful, 5 or so key accounts that like get most of our attention in terms of account management. Like we just closed an account this year that Brandon had touched on it before, that was basically a 3-year project of following up with the brand and negotiating and just getting to know each other on a working relationship standpoint. And we closed the account, and this is one product that could potentially generate us 200,000 in profit in 1 year. So like as far as quality goes, like I would say our business is more so focused on the quality of the accounts.
Yeah, you develop a sixth sense as well, like over time. Like we joke around about it, and it's like we'll find a listing. We've never talked to the company before. We have no idea what the brand is, and we'll look at it and we'll be like, that's an exclusive opportunity right there. And you can just tell, and so I think over time you develop the ability to do that. But like Brad said at the beginning, I mean, you don't have the knowledge and the specifics to target companies. So I think that just going volume and, like you said, proving the concept that it works, because we could tell you all day long that this works, but until you really do it for yourself, you're not going to be able to justify it.
Yeah,
It's funny how you kind of develop that sixth sense for really anything that you spend time with and get good at, right? Retail arbitrage sale will sort of like sense where like the sizes are going to work or the shoes are going to work, or like, oh, that's a really good price. Let me
they
scan
can
those.
see it immediately, right? There's
Right. Just like the online seller, the OA
yeah.
seller is like manual sourcing and can just kind of expedite the process of a lot of it just by clicking on the sort of the right stuff. And so it's kind of cool that you obviously see that in the wholesale model too. In terms of the warehouse space, give us a lowdown in terms of like your team, who's working it. Do you have a warehouse manager? How big is it? Give us a lowdown there.
Yeah, so from a SKU perspective, throughout the year, we probably carry anywhere from 250 to 300 SKUs. Outside of Q4, that's probably more like 500 and a little bit upwards. So warehousing standpoint, warehouse is about 2,500 square feet. We got an office. We do have an operations warehouse manager that'll, ship product out, receive deliveries, and do all the day-to-day prepping, shipping, etc. Brandon and I are focused on, doing the outreach. We also have a remote sales manager out in California. Our buddy Matt, he does cold outreach for us too. So, he was at Miami Seller Conference. Shout out to Matt Karuba. But we totally like just have scaled this up through volume in terms of contacting companies. Like that's our primary focus in the business. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean,
He says, nah.
You're breaking it down good, man. Yeah. Do you guys have any virtual assistants helping out?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good question. I forgot about the VAs, man.
Yeah, man. Come on.
Yeah, no, they're great. Like we have a couple of VAs that'll do anything from a sourcing perspective, a lot of the back end stuff on Amazon. So, when we talk about things like listing optimization, PPC, a lot of this stuff takes time and it takes a lot of back and forth communication with Amazon's catalog team, because Amazon won't just let you change any images on a listing, right? You got to have the authorization. You got to, be able to tap into their algorithm, upload flat files, things like that. So that's what some of our VAs do, is some of the back end catalog work, some of the, the A+ content, the branding, things of that nature. And then obviously sourcing is a big one too, and some administrative stuff like scheduling and emailing.
Now, in terms of kind of like your guys' partnership, what's the breakdown? What's the diversification of how you guys manage your time inside the business? Do you kind of have like different tasks that you guys work on separately, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, like Brad was saying before, our primary focus, the last thing, I mean, maybe the perspective will change as we grow, but the last thing that we would ever outsource would be the relationships with the brands and the suppliers. So in my mind, I want to free up all my time operationally so I can focus on sales, because sales is what's generating money. It's what's generating new products, new suppliers, new brands. And so the more the effort that can be put into that on our end, the more the company is going to grow, and then we'll find a way to outsource everything else.
Yeah, and the way we kind of divide and conquer on that is like, because Brandon's reaching out to companies on his list and I'm reaching out to companies on my list, we're able to develop a relationship with these brands, and they just keep working, with us. So most of the time, unless it's necessary, I won't like throw one of my relationships to him, right? Unless it's necessary, because it allows us to really build a close-knit relationship with the brand. And when we talk about brands, like a lot of times we're dealing directly with the brand owner or like a key high-level decision maker. So in terms of like kind of divide and conquer from that perspective, we we manifest the relationships that we have with these brands, and then like bring it all together in one sort of working system. It makes me think that like it's so funny where this business takes you. Like I've made trips and flown around like to different areas of the country to simply take a brand owner out to dinner. And it's just really a cool opportunity and experience to, do things like that, because, you just don't think, like, when you first started, there was nothing there,
So
Incredibly.
is that the big differentiation? You guys just own separate accounts, and then that kind of fuels the effort separately?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, when we don't necessarily own the accounts separately, more so we build the
We'll
relationship.
manage them. Yeah. Own, manage.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's like the equivalent of, if I'm looking at it and you have, an account or a person that you've been talking to or whoever it is, and then I say, all right, well, Garrett's no longer here, Miles is your new guy. And
Yeah,
they're gonna
it's a little inorganic, man. You know what I mean?
they're gonna
Yeah,
go,
sure.
who's Miles, right? So like,
No one knows.
Yeah.
So I mean that's part of it, but we've had a lot of, I mean, same thing. I actually a couple months ago had a brand owner fly out to our warehouse here from California or on the West Coast, and just for a meeting with me, right? So a lot of the time people won't even pick up the phone and call someone.
They're scared, man. And all the money goes to the people that aren't scared. And thank God for that, selfishly. Unfortunately, right?
Yeah, and it's not as scary as it seems, It's like I remember my first cold calls, and like I was with Brad when I did them, and I spent a good 5 or 10 minutes not wanting to call, right? Like it was just not something I was too
Then
comfortable
the
with.
phone weighs less and less
Yeah.
every
Oh
single
my gosh.
time.
Like imagine
Exactly.
like some men in the modern world need to imagine like telling their grandpa, I'm afraid to go to the Nike outlet and scan products. Like people will look me in the eyes and tell me that.
Because I don't want to go up to the cashier with 20 things and that'd
Oh
be an
my
awkward
gosh.
moment.
Yeah. All right. Just work a job for 40 years then. Like,
I don't know.
come on. Like that's
My
your other
grandfather,
option, unfortunately.
my grandfather was at the Battle of the Bulge in World War II.
Yes. Oh my gosh, man. We gotta have some perspective on this stuff,
He
bro.
was getting shot at 18, so I don't know if he would be
Dude.
down with that.
Exactly, man. And so, like, just curiosity wise, what were you guys doing before Amazon? Because you guys, I assume, are like late 20s, mid 20s, late 20s.
Yeah, I'm 26.
Yeah, I'll be 26 in a few days.
Sweet. So,
Hey,
were you
happy early
guys, like,
birthday.
yeah,
Oh,
facts. Were you guys like out of school already, or have you guys done 9 to 5s as well?
So for me, I worked like an internship in college, but I didn't actually get a 9 to 5 job because, I started down this Amazon road in, 2019 or so. And then I was graduating, and that was when you did it too.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I said perfect timing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. It was right when it took off. But yeah, I started down the road then, and at that point I was still in college. So I was doing it part-time. And 2020 was when I graduated college, and it was like right at that point where 2020, people weren't even getting jobs. So it was like, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting looking back too, because like obviously that time was like very bad for a lot of like health reasons and stuff, but for a lot of like people like financially, it was the perfect storm of like opportunity, being prepared, taking advantage of that stuff. Cause there's really only like two people in terms like if we're thinking like business wise, that you either like curled up in a ball and didn't do anything about it, or took advantage of the massive revolution of e-commerce and crypto and XYZ, right? And that's the beautiful thing looking back. It's like that was completely the most transformative period of my life. I assume was for you guys too.
Yeah. I mean, I started a little differently. I mean, the broke college story is Brad's start. You know, I
Gotcha,
was
okay.
mine's still relatively dramatic. I wound up I actually found Reezy, who I had just met.
Oh yeah.
Good friends now, but back then, like I had no idea about any of this, and I just wanted to make some extra money. And I was working a job at just a part-time job at a store. And I drive a truck, and it wasn't too great on gas, and so I needed more money for gas. And I took $20 from my job, and I watched the Reezy Resales video and went to a thrift store, and I bought a bunch of crap that didn't sell, including light bulbs and clothes that didn't have good metrics and all this other stuff. And eventually that money wound up rolling over. And I just kept reinvesting that money from my job into reselling. And eventually, it all accumulated into this. But for me, it all started with $20. And that same $20 investment is what has been to this day, essentially.
Sweet. Okay. And so man, it's beautiful thinking about on like the thrifting days and stuff, man. Honestly, like thinking about like how little you would get done, but like how those times of like building work ethic and determination and meeting people on the internet and stuff was so important, right? Continuing with that next point. So you guys were lucky because I assume that I know you guys met in person. So I assume you guys probably live really close to each other as well.
Right across from each other.
Yep, exactly, right. And so you guys are very lucky in that you found like Amazon sellers, even just you guys, right, in your local community as well. Do you guys have a bunch of Amazon seller friends, or are you guys lucky enough to just be able to operate in your little nucleus and such? Or are you guys taking advantage of the community as well?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's like we don't have a ton of other people we know that sell on Amazon. Miami Seller Conference was one of the first Amazon seller specific networking events we went to. And I mean, it was awesome. Obviously, we're here on your podcast. We got the chance to meet some really cool people and make some great connections. So,
I mean, it's also just kind of, I don't know. I think it's changed a little bit over the years, but the reselling community and everything, it was kind of a hush hush thing for a long time. And I think, guys like both of you and other, people in the space have opened it up to be like, hey, there's enough in this for everyone. And I think that we've all been like that. I mean, Brad was saying like the way that we met, I saw him using like Scoutify on his phone. And I remember grabbing something from Marshall's and being like, or pointing him in a direction and being like, hey, these are profitable. You should check these out, And so I've always had that mindset of wanting to help other people and teach other people how to grow. And so I think that the community is getting more towards that. And I'm like coming out of my shell a little bit and wanting to be involved in it more because of that. And I think guys like you were doing a great job of making that happen.
Yeah, because you totally could have been like, oh my gosh, that's another Amazon seller right there. Is he gonna hate
Run the other way? Yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of people do that, man, right? And then the people that don't get rewarded with beautiful partnerships like you guys have, friendships like Garrett and I have, like compounding relationships. We got this podcast as a result of meeting on Instagram, getting on Zoom. Right when Garrett and I met, he put me on a ton of like really cool OA sourcing sauce. And then we probably talked literally every single day since, like 99.9% of days since. It's been 1,000 days. We made a shitload of money together, going to make a lot more in the future and everything. So as we finish up here, fellas, if you guys could go back to both when you were just getting started with RA, as well as when you're getting started with wholesale, what's some stuff you would tell yourselves as beginners that could make your progress go a lot quicker?
I would say, in looking back on the whole experience, at least for me, especially with, going from RA and then when we transitioned into wholesale, I would say just, I was very much so absorbed in the process, but I was always like striving towards the next milestone. And a lot of people, obviously, we all get into this for, the monetary aspect at the end of the day. But the more you think of it as like a process and kind of immerse yourself in the community, join groups, talk to people, and just enjoy the process of what you're doing and appreciate the fact that you're on a journey, of entrepreneurship. like the money's going to come. And that's one thing we found is like, you know, providing value to the brands and just kind of doing the process is what's the most rewarding thing. So I would say, you know, looking back on it, I would just say immerse yourself in the process, like especially as a beginner seller.
The
Well,
advice that I give people a lot of the times is when they're beginning, grow organically. You know, if you fortunately have the luxury to be working another job or something and supporting your living, and you're not relying on e-commerce in any sort to pay your bills, then don't make beginner mistakes with you know, expert money, right? So don't throw $20,000 into it and then make the mistakes in the first 6 months that much every reseller makes. Because you know, you learn from your mistakes, and I'd rather learn with little money than a lot of money. Same thing with Brad said, and investing in the community. I think there's enough information for everyone out there. That's how I started, learning from those who knew more than me, you know, and then like he said, just enjoying the process and getting from that survival stage of, I don't know if I can do this, to the growth stage and then prosperity of your business is really rewarding. Because you're checking yourself that what you're saying and what you're doing actually works, and you have the results to back it up, you know.
Yep. And then over time, once you do get that capital, you decide to inject it, then it's way more amplified once you do have the skill and stuff. But the skill's the important part, because the capital comes if you find the system to put it into and such. And so for the beautiful Buy Box Bandits listeners who want to follow up, learn more about you guys and follow up with your journey, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, sure thing. So I mean, Twitter, TikTok, or X now, I guess, right? TikTok, Instagram, everything is under OperationAMZ. And then there's a YouTube channel that posting more all of Brad's.
YouTube. I've been doing YouTube for probably a couple years now. I just, you know, I got a bunch of videos on there that go into like in-depth tutorials on how to source suppliers, what to say when contacting brands. So, you know, you guys can follow us on YouTube too.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate you boys.
You know, anything that the community needs and answer any questions, I'm always happy to do it. So
cool, sweet. So y'all follow the boys right there. Appreciate you guys coming on, and we'll see you guys in the next one.